Love
And
it. Perfect.
I love that she tells us that.
I know.
Um, I, well, first of all, I can't believe that it's been 4 years. Like,
Since Housewife.
I know. Um, which actually, let's start right off with this.
Yeah.
Ashley Winstead, hello. So
Hi.
excited to talk with you. You have put out one, two, three, four, five, six, seven. This will be the eighth book in 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, that's bonkers.
Yeah.
And when do you sleep?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't.
Yes.
Sorry, I interrupted you. If there was any more to that, like when do you eat? Do you have friends? What do you do in your life other than write books? The answer is nothing. I
I love the dedication though,
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
what a lot of people don't realize, I think it's something that comes up in some interviews, but the general public, I don't think really understands how long a book takes from when you start it,
Oh
when
yeah.
you give it to an editor, an agent, a whomever, they go through all of their edits and then it gets into the world. So this timeline is again so short, but maybe let's talk about how when did you start writing books? Like when
Yeah.
did you really say this is what I'm going to do with my life?
Yeah, I love that, and I could not agree more. I don't think people, readers who aren't in the publishing industry know what the arc of a book's creation process looks like. So I really started in earnest writing a book that now lives only. It's my shelf book, but technically in reality it lives in my laptop files. And to never see the light of day, it was a YA contemporary fantasy, and I started it right, I would say, in 2016. So 2016, I had just defended my dissertation. I was done with my graduate program, and I like to joke that my writing career, I was one of those nerds who wanted to be a writer from a very young age. The minute I realized that I could be like not only a reader, which was my entire identity and life up to that point, but a creator of these stories, I was like all in, did everything I possibly could to try to set myself on the right path. A super type A person, very, very ambitious, first in my family to go to college, just trying to do everything possible to make that dream come true. And I got a staggering amount of rejection my senior year of college. I'm sure you and I have talked about this because I like to share my trauma with a lot of people. It helps alleviate it. But yeah, so I got that. I got rejected from all 12 MFA programs that I applied to after, going to college on a writing scholarship and just, all the things that I thought were it was a very different message from the universe about what I was supposed to do and what my talent level was. And like writers and human beings are prone to do, I looked at the negative and I said, "Oh, that's the truth. None of the other stuff is right."
Mm.
So I didn't write again for 8 to 9 years and stuffed that time with working out in Los Angeles in the TV industry at Warner Brothers, which will come back later, to inform some books. In the music industry in Nashville once again, and then getting my PhD. So it wasn't until I wrapped my PhD in English Lit, wrote a book length book about other books, my dissertation essentially,
Okay.
that I feel like I proved to myself somehow that maybe I could do this. Maybe it was worth um, opening my broken ego, my very fragile ego, to rejection again. So it took me a really long time to kind of piece myself back together into a place where I started writing. Like I said, that was in 2016. And what I was reading at the time as an antidote to all the heavy texts in my graduate program was YA fantasy. So I was obsessed with V. Schwab and
Mm.
well, I guess Alana Andrews is adult, but obsessed with the Kate Daniels series. And so that's what I started writing. Um, I ended up getting an agent for that YA fantasy after years of working and reworking it. Um, and then my agent said, here's a 15-page edit letter on this book. So once again, you've been rewriting it for 3 to 4 years. I want you to keep going. And I looked at that edit letter, looked at my blank Word doc, and thought it'll be easier just to start a different dang book. So
Yeah.
I stumbled into writing what would become my debut, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife, as a procrastination tactic from the book I should have been editing. And so, about 40,000 words into Dreams, which I swear to God came out of me like a fugue state, just poured.
Yeah.
My agent had told me, and a lot of other people had told me, that I was bad at pacing and bad that I just wanted to like sit a bunch of characters in
Mm.
a room and have them talk, which I still struggle with wanting to do to this day. But I was told, plot's very important to a book. So in my like infinite resources of spite and defiance, I was like, I will show people I can write a super fast pace, plotty book. And that's just what Dreams was to start with, like
Mm.
a proof of concept, a proof of skill. And yeah, halfway through, I was like, I think this is a thriller. There's a dead body. There's a lot of secrets, and that is how I stumbled into this writing career as a thriller writer. And in the pandemic, with a little extra time on my hands, um, I started writing romance to cheer myself up and live in a mental space that was going to work out and where people were like loving and happy. Um, and sold that. And now I'm on this 2 book a year run.
Yeah, I sat down and listed out all the books and listed out
Mm.
all of the publication dates because again, I was looking at this being like, is this really that fast? Like,
Yeah.
there are authors who it's 10 years in between each book,
Yeah.
and then there are authors that are doing quick turnarounds, but not, how do I say this? It's not a churn and burn. I know
Yeah.
that turn gets thrown around a lot, and
Yeah.
sometimes it's for the better and for the worse. What I found interesting, because I said this to someone else, I will admit, I have read everything since Last Housewife.
Mm-hmm.
I have not actually read In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. I need to. It's on my TBR, but things happen and new books come out, and I'm just like,
Yes.
I want to read the next one. I love, though, that juxtaposition of thriller and romance. And I have seen some authors, I feel like, do it as well.
Yeah.
Last summer, after going to Winter Institute, I made it my mission to become one of our romance experts in the store.
Love
I
that.
did a couple of panels, I did a presentation, a huge PowerPoint of what was going on in the industry. And then it was, well, this book will bury me, and we'll get to it in a second. Just totally like, I loved it. But I started reading a few random. I picked up an advanced reader copy of Saratoga Schaefer's Trad Wife.
Yeah.
It came out earlier this year. And I went, wait, if this is what horror and thriller are doing now, I need to find out more. So now I rotate between a horror book and a romance book and everyone
We're
at
the
work,
same.
well, they think I've lost my mind. And I'm like, but here's the thing. There's always some dramatic, painful thing happening in a romance book too, right?
Yeah.
Like somehow
Yeah.
your heart is getting ripped out for better or worse, and then
Hmm.
you're getting something healed in you.
Yes.
There is something in a thriller or a horror sometimes that I do think there is a healing that can happen. For me, The Last Housewife, when I picked it up and started hearing like, oh, this is from the point of view of a woman when we hear these stories, and we can talk a little bit about the last housewife and where you kind of came up with the story. We still have our original conversation up on our
Mhm.
YouTube, but I know that you used some true stories. You
Mhm.
pulled out some things. When we watch true crime, sometimes it doesn't have a good, we don't get the satisfaction of the bad guy getting his due, and all we
Yeah.
hear about is him. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking of also Jessica Knoll's Bright Young Women.
Yeah.
I instantly knew who the he was in that book, even though she does not name him until like the very end. But
Yeah.
for me, just like with The Last Housewife, I was more interested in what was happening to the women. I don't
Yeah.
care about this man. His story is told. He did
Yeah.
his thing. I don't care. And that's what I loved about The Last Housewife. Same with Midnight is the Darkest Hour from a
Mhm.
female perspective. This Book Will Bury Me. Janeway has all of these things going on in her. And we
Yeah.
know that this horrible thing happened, but I'm like, I just want to know how she's feeling. I want to know
Yes.
what her reaction to this horrible crime. And then are we going to get, only maybe from her perspective, a happy ending?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that you do that in these thrillers where a lot of people, I feel like when you read, or they think you read horror because you love watching people get murdered.
No, it's about
I want,
catharsis.
yes. Okay, so talk to
No.
me a little bit
Yeah.
about what writing thriller and horror, how that speaks to you.
Yeah, I just like I've memorized everything that you've just said so I can replay it to myself later because you completely describe not only why I write thriller and kind of horror adjacent books, but also why I write romance because there is what I'm interested in doing across both genres, which you're right. I think of them both like the romance genre and the thriller and horror genres as the body genres. Like they're the genre of extreme visceral experience, whether that's falling in love and having sex and entering this new world of pleasure and or in the thriller space fear and the conquering of negative emotions and having things like your physicality threatened. So they're intense and emotional genres, which I'm drawn to. I like a story with big stakes, both personally and kind of for the wider world. But what I am always trying to write is a character, a woman, going from a place of whether it's not loving herself enough, not understanding herself well enough, there's some wound she's walking around with, like so many of us are. And I want to take her through some really intense things. But the point of all of that is, of those experiences, the plot is that she's going to come to a place of transcendence, catharsis, self-love, self-knowledge.
Mhm.
They're one of my favorite poets, Terrence Hayes. He in one of his sonnets called oh gosh, it's in the book American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin, which is just incredible. He writes, "I mean to leave a record of my raptures." And that has always struck me and been a North Star. Like I know I write commercial fiction. I'm writing thrillers that if I'm lucky, are going to be on in airport shelves. And I understand I'm writing commercial fiction, and yet I am still my purpose is always to reflect something as true as I can about the human experience and the highs of the human experience through the lens that, only I have as my own little singular, organism. So yeah, they're all various records of my raptures, the dark ones and the lighter ones.
Yeah. And then I think earlier this year you bridged those two, and I know I got an Indie Next review in for this one, and
Thank you.
I like sometimes when I write these reviews, I'm like, how do I explain what I am feeling in this moment? I actually find writing reviews for books really difficult
Yes.
because I just sometimes can't grasp what it has done to my little like lizard brain in the back or something where she's back there being like, no, this is for us. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
But the Future Saints is what I would call the closest to literary fiction I will ever read.
No.
Because I'm not a huge fan of a character driven where
Yeah.
nothing much happens and we're all inside the person's head. I
Yeah.
need that meshing of the two. And so when I first picked this up, and your note, I want to say for all of my booksellers out there, I can't speak for everyone, but I will say I could not love getting a handwritten note from an author more than anything in the world. Like it turns me into like a gooey little mess. How so for the Future Saints, I start it and I'm like, oh, this is different. This
Yeah.
is not what I am used to with your writing. And then you almost made me cry. And I was so mad
Julie, now my goal is to make you cry one day. I hope you know.
because I read books like most people do, maybe as an escape.
Yeah.
We want to get away from some of the bigger feelings in our life. We experience them through someone else, but there's
Mhm.
that disconnect where I can say, okay, this isn't really me. But the two points of view in this and the way that they came together was something so different than what and I love commercial fiction, and I know a lot of people say that when they're like, I it was genre fiction and this and that. No, I
Yeah.
love a
Yeah.
genre fiction, right?
Me too.
YA, mystery, thriller, horror, all of those. And again, I stay away from what people might consider literary. And
Yeah.
I got into this and I was like, but something is still happening, right? There
Yeah.
and there is, I mean, this has been out for a while. We're not going to give away any like super plot points or anything like that, but there is a little bit of a ghost
Yep.
in this story, and that ghost is the person we are missing the most, and maybe a little bit of ourselves, like whatever
Yep.
they embodied to us.
Oh, beautifully
So
put.
and so there's this moment where I'm like, wait, how have you now spanned three different genres in this time? And yet it still reads exactly like I would expect from
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm always searching for the through line in my
I
work.
just want to say it was one of my like, and of course because of when it came out, I got to read it in 2025. So
Yeah.
it's like not on my best books of 2026, but based on publication date, it can be. So there's that.
Yeah. Thank
Um,
you.
so
You know,
why did you make this change with the Future Saints?
mhm. So I'm going to give you the super honest answer, which involves a little bit of publishing tea. But there were two reasons. One's a business reason, one super personal. So, as you know, I wrote two rom-coms and published them and really enjoyed exercising that part of my brain. I think there's nothing harder than humor writing.
Mm-hmm.
And making something that you find funny translate to strangers who are picking up a book. So I have a ton of respect for people who do lighter, funnier writing. Um, either either it just didn't fit maybe my voice enough, or it just there was something about the rom-coms that I wrote, and I love them, but it just didn't feel like maybe they were resonating with readers as much, or that I hadn't really figured out what I did best yet. Because, like we said, I've been doing this for 5 years. So even though I keep writing a lot of books, this is still, there's on some level, I'm still exploring like, where do I fit? Where does my voice belong? What's it doing? What does it do better? than other things. And so rom-coms was kind of a territory for me where I felt like maybe I could put that down for a minute and explore something else. And The Future Saints, funny enough, started out as a true rom-com. In draft one, it was 75,000 words of zany slapstick humor and, sex scenes and just your true romantic comedy. And it was my option book for my romance publisher. So it was supposed to be the follow-up to the boyfriend candidate. Um, and two things happened. One, I decided that I didn't want to work with that publisher anymore for business reasons. Kind of had a bit of a tense relationship there. Things weren't going great. And the beauty of working across genres and with multiple publishers is so many writers are like, is what I'm experiencing normal? I only
Mm-hmm.
have this one view, of this one experience, but are other people having the same experience? And working with different publishers gave me more of a bird's eye view where I could say like, oh, no, this is not how everyone is approaching these things. So anyway, um, I I had the chance to publish The Future Saints as a rom-com with my romance publisher. And I was very nervous about saying no and going out on a limb, rejecting a bird in the hand for the possibility that I could flop out on the open market. And then, unfortunately, my father passed away very unexpectedly. We've talked about this before. This is years ago, so I'm doing okay. Don't want anyone, watching to feel bad. But my father passed away, and one of the gifts of grief, unexpectedly, is incredible perspective. You all of a sudden everything whittles down into what matters, and it turns out it's a really small little group of things, and what doesn't. And with the clarity of being in grief, I thought, absolutely, I'm going to take a chance on something better. Went out said no, went out with the Future Saints, and as luck and fate would have it, I ended up the book ended up in the hands of an editor at Atria named Caitlin Olson, who read it. We had a Zoom call. I'm doing this Zoom call from my father's office because I'm still in Florida with my mom trying to sort through his things for her. And so she knows none of this, of course, because I don't want to scare anyone off with like, yes, I'm here in my dead father's study, talking to you, blah blah blah. So she says, "Hey, Ashley, I have a very unconventional idea for you. I want to buy this book, but I read this book and I do not think it's a rom-com. I think that it is a book about grief, sisterhood, and like hope and redemption after getting smashed in the face. And she's like, so I would want to buy this book if you would be willing to completely rewrite it in a different genre. She called it book club upmarket, which is still, that's like lit fic, but with a more commercial bent.
Yes.
And she's like, but it would require you really digging deep on the subject of grief
Mhm.
and trauma. Like, is that even something you're interested in? And I was just like, okay, we're still not going to let her know where I'm sitting and what I'm in the wake of. And I was just like, yes, I think that that is something that I could do. And it ended up being the biggest gift because I went back to that book and was able to have this I rewrote everything, have this cathartic experience with my main character, Hannah, pour so much of what I was thinking and feeling um, very directly onto the page. And it became this whole other genre. While hopefully, and it sounds like, at least for you, which I'm thrilled about, retaining that like propulsive feeling and all the great stuff that belong to, the genre fiction.
Well, it's interesting too. this book really, for me, touched on so much. So it did remind me of This Book Will Bury Me in the
Yeah.
talking about social media and talking about
Yes.
parasocial relationships online, and what do artists or creators or whatever we call them owe us
Hmm.
for what they put out into the world. Obviously, with This Book Will Bury Me, it was more about what people in the true crime sphere
Yeah.
are they doing good, are they doing bad, is it
Hmm.
something that is healthy. With the Future Saints, it made me think of what does Taylor Swift owe us, what does Britney
Hmm.
Spears ever owe us. I grew up with Britney Spears, she's less than a year younger than me, and
Hmm.
to see her now and be like, man, what happened? Right?
Yeah.
What did we do? What did her family, the industry, like, do to her? There was something so interesting about that when everyone starts saying, we don't like this album you've put out, when the artist thinks that it's the most beautiful thing that they've ever done. Like, what do they owe us,
Yeah.
in that sense? And there were so many times, because if I remember correctly, there are um the uh like blog posts and news articles that are in the
Yeah.
book, and the people commenting that, like, the pop princess does not f with Hannah Cortland, it turns like, it was so interesting to have all those things come together,
Yeah.
and then have it still be very literary, very like a dissertation, looking at something that's happening both from inside and outside.
Yeah.
And then I loved, let's get into it, you do that in Hot Girl Murder Club.
I
Like,
do.
you can't like, immediately starts off with referencing someone writing a dissertation about
Yes.
these are ladies of the dark, or later the not as nice, calling them the Hot Girl Murder Club, like, kind of
Yeah.
degrading them. But you
Uh-huh.
also have some parasocial current events, like, you have people talking outside of the sphere, and thinking they know Scout Sage more than they do.
Hmm.
Um so let's talk about this one. It
Yeah.
comes out in, like, basically a month from tomorrow.
I know.
That's so crazy. And it is,
It's
again, so
wild.
weird, because, like, I think I originally read the digital review copy back in January when I was in Hawaii.
Thank you.
And let's get this out of the way beforehand, so that I can just have, like, my moment. I'm reading the DRC. I'm in an Airbnb in Hilo, Hawaii, and I get to the acknowledgments. My career wouldn't exist without the smart, talented booksellers who do the Lord's work of getting books into readers' hands every day around the country. You list 20 different bookstores, some that I know, some that I've never heard of. And then we get to Roundabout Books. And I think I actually screamed.
Yay!
And I sent a picture of it to the staff.
Oh, I
And
love
I'm
it.
sure one of my coworkers was like, "You're in Hawaii, knock it off."
Yeah. Enjoy
And I was
Hawaii.
like, the joy of being a bookseller never stops. It doesn't, because I'm always reading for whatever reason, myself, my work, or, and so it never stops. And so to see that, I need you to know, I hope that every single other bookseller, from one of the ones mentioned and any of the ones not mentioned, know how much you appreciate them, because I think they do.
I
But
hope
let's
so.
thank you. Um,
Also, I love you. We have to stop. I love you, Julie, and I love Roundabout Books. And I don't like truly, this is such, writing is such a solitary, kind of existence in so many ways. And these opportunities to have like real substantive conversations with someone who's read your work and has such beautiful, thoughtful questions and things to say, I mean, it sticks with you. I carry it into writing my books. And so it's like, I want to shout about it in whatever ways I can. So that is my little love letter to you.
Thank you. I think that the industry knows what indie booksellers do, but I
Yeah.
hope that other readers keep understanding what indie bookstores mean to the whole thing. We
Yeah.
can't discount Barnes and Noble. They keep a big part of the industry alive. They really do. They are helpful when it comes
Mm,
to negotiating with publishers, etc.
that's
But
good.
being having an indie bookstore mentioned in an acknowledgement is something that I think can't be um almost can't be quantified because
Yeah.
you're helping put us on the map while we do our best work of bringing in more readers to say,
Yeah.
please read this book. I hope you love it as much as I do. And that's hard to do because I'm telling someone how much I loved it, knowing their experiences are completely different. So
Right.
they might not love it. Um, where did this book come from?
Yeah. Hot Girl Murder Club. It by the way, the sight of a book with tabs in it is like such a joy to a writer. So thank you. So Hot Girl Murder Club is like you said, I wrote This Book Will Bury Me, which is very heavy. There's a through line of grief. This Book Will Bury Me and Future Saints are the two books I worked on in the wake of my father's passing. So they're just the most immediate confrontation with grief and like mortality salience, I guess, that I've written it just in two different genres. So by the time I was ready to write my next thriller, Hot Girl Murder Club, I was telling myself, we are going to write a sexy, soapy, fun book that's going to be a departure from where we've been, and it's going to be pure joy and pleasure. And I promised Julie that I was doing it for a while. I was like, I put together all the things that I loved and have loved since I was a little girl, which is like big groups of women in books. Like I was obsessed with The Babysitter's Club as a kid, Sweet Valley High, Jessica and Elizabeth Wakefield, I'm obsessed with science fiction and Dune and the Bene Gesserit sisterhood. Anytime there's a group of women in a book, I want to read it. And so I wanted to write kind of a sexy, soapy, murdery version of that. So I was well into that and then had two very pivotal and formative conversations with women, executives in two different creative industries, in the film and TV industry and the publishing industry, that kind of reshaped my book and my thinking. So The Last Housewife was well on its way to becoming a Netflix show. It had been adapted, it had a writer's room. I got to go visit them. The incredible, talented writers. It was mostly female writers. I loved it. It got greenlit, and the limited series, all 8 episodes were written. And then Trump got reelected in 2024, and the show got canceled a month later. And my showrunner, God bless her, incredible woman, um, my showrunner got on the phone with me to kind of tell me what the heck happened. And she said, "Look, this is the long and short of it. There's there's a new mandate in town. There's a new idea of what people want, and it is not female vengeance stories and stories about women who've been wronged who are gonna fight for bloody justice. It is people want escapism, just pure escapism. They want to bury their heads in the sand and they want to wait out the next 4 years or so. And it's a whole different environment now. And she's like, this is not only what I'm hearing, but what my fellow writers and showrunners are hearing. So I'm taking that, I'm processing that, and then I have a second conversation with an executive in the publishing industry, um, who has been a fan of my work, and we were thinking about working together. And she read, Hot Girl Murder Club in its early version. And she said, "Look, I'll be really honest with you. The appetite for Me Too or female justice stories is dead. Like, no, the field has been, the market's been saturated. People are tired of it. Everyone wants fantasy and just pure escapism. So, let's not be too on the nose with our feminism, you know? And so I hear both of these things. I'm grappling with these, tastemakers, ideas, these important people, and I am a feminist thriller writer. Like that's what I do. And I just thought to myself, one, defiance and spite. I was like, I'm doing it anyway. But two, I thought, okay, here's my challenge for this next book. I am going to write a feminist revenge thriller for people, an audience, readership that doesn't think that they want this. And I'm going to have my cake and eat it too by making it as escapist as I possibly can and as close to like the tropes and the joys you get from reading a fantasy novel
Mm.
combined with like the gritty reality of what women in 2026 are experiencing in this apparently post Me Too reality. So my way of combining and bridging these two seemingly disparate things was to set my book in Hollywood,
Mhm.
because to my mind celebrity life is the closest we have in real life to a fantasy life,
Mhm.
to something that most people, myself included, will never experience, And Hollywood, as someone who had moved to Hollywood in my younger years and was of the assistant class, was on desks covering phones, like I know that Hollywood and Los Angeles feels like a fantasy, like this terrain of a place where you think behind closed doors, there's a whole other world that you just can't access. But if you can get the key somehow, put in enough time, make the right moves, you can get there. So, all of this together is I went back and rewrote all of Hot Girl Murder Club. Yeah, trying to like have this cake and eat it too. So that's the true story of where this book came from.
You know, it's interesting that there are these people, and obviously I understand that people watch for trends. I
Yeah.
see it in publishing. We see it in the colors of a cover for the next 6 months will
Oh
be
yeah.
a certain color, or we'll be using certain fonts. There will be, cozy fantasy. Becky Chambers and like her are very popular, and I completely understand why. But there are times when they say these big overarching things of like, no one wants to read this, and I'm like, who are you talking to?
I know.
Who are you finding this information out from? Because the everyday person that I'm coming in contact with, or just me myself, this is the story I want to read. This
Yeah.
is the thing that I want to see happening more often. This is the part of a horror book, a thriller, or just anything in general, why we watch Dateline, to hopefully get some sort of justice at the
Yes.
end. Like, why are we all going through all of this if it means absolutely nothing? Because someone else can say, well, I have more money than you do, so I don't get in trouble for this. Like,
Exactly.
this, when I'm like writing notes and I'm marking up the pages where something like gets to me, and I'm going like, immediately before I even had found it, the first thing was like, man, this is, I'm hearing Margaret Atwood, like I'm hearing Handmaid's Tale. And then we get to an actual Atwood quote about follow the wolves, and it's
Yes.
like, I'm hearing the timing though too of like Taylor Swift's father figure, and, or
Yes.
no, eldest daughter, excuse me. We were the wolves and we looked like fire. But like these things where people are like, oh, everyone's over the Me Too. And I'm like, no, I'm still waiting for people just in my own community to get their due. Like,
Yeah.
to stop being able to treat other people like this and just get away with it. So I don't agree with either of those executives.
Yeah, no, I wrote this whole book because I felt the exact same way. And it's infuriating because on the one hand, they're the gatekeepers, they're the people who make it happen. And so many, and I know this is outside my own experience, but so many writers are told things like, yeah, this book is XYZ, it's a little too cozy, and so we're not going to buy it, or whatever it is, it doesn't fit with the trend, so we don't think there's a readership for it. And so this is career ending stuff
Right.
that people are able to say. Or it's so there's so much power there. And at the same time, you do look with a certain degree of hopelessness at the kind of lack of teeth with which we've responded to, like, the Epstein crisis, and
Mhm.
the Supreme Court justices who are allowed to take these positions of power despite the things they've done in their lives. And like there's too many examples for me to list, but you see so many things happen without repercussion. And you're absolutely right, Julie, that is like why this it I think it's so even more important to be pouring this into fiction and to
Yeah.
show what it would look like if there were consequences, or
Right.
what it would look like to have justice. And so that is, right now, it's like one of the best places to find it, to find justice and consequences, is in the fiction that particularly women and femme-minded writers are writing
Mhm.
and creating, which is kind of a damning indictment of our world right now. But yeah, I think it's more necessary than ever. And yeah, Hawk Girl was my, like, this can't it was my act of resistance, I guess, like my statement that, like, this can't be true, but maybe
Yeah.
it is. I don't know.
Well, and again, I loved we're going back in time a little bit. We have our inciting incidents.
Yeah.
We have this dissertation, which we know is being written in the future, looks
Hmm.
at it as if you have found Offred's recordings from The
I'm
Handmaid's
so
Tale and you're
happy that,
listening to it and being
yes.
like, what the hell is happening? You have what I really find interesting. And again, the most recent example would be Future Saint's dual point of view,
Yeah.
and that can be very hard to do. What I found really interesting as a former book editor as well is you bring in multiple characters, you
Yeah.
give them each a pivotal role in revealing something to the story, in moving the plot, in questioning what they're seeing around them. But everyone except Isabel is third person limited, and
Yeah.
Isabel is first person. What was also really interesting is it took us, I completely reread it this weekend. So I've now read
Oh,
it twice.
you.
I so we have a gap of time
Hmm.
from some of Isabel's 10 years ago chapters in
Yeah.
our incident, which we're not giving it away. There's a death, a very violent death of a young woman. It's not until chapter 18 that she's in the present day, but it did, like, I didn't miss her. She
Yeah.
wasn't not there. She and Scout and everyone, their stories were being pulled along by Gray and Rosie and Juliet and Dakota, um, and weaving it so much that by the time I get to that chapter where Isabel is present day, and I'm like, but she's been here the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't suddenly go, oh, where's that character been? Because
Yeah.
I
Oh,
find
I
that
love that.
sometimes with multi point of view or with multiple timeline, that
Yeah.
you suddenly miss something, and then suddenly like doing the I had an editorial professor in grad school completely ruin a couple of TV shows for me because he hates shows like CSI.
Uh-huh.
Have this massive amount of narrative exposition because they can't actually show you what they're doing. They have to tell
Mm,
you
yeah.
because it's on a screen. And so sometimes when you have that timeline change or a dual point of view, you'll get to the point where one character is telling you everything that happened because time has passed, but you haven't been with them.
Yeah, so you
And
got to do your little info dump.
you do have to do your
Yeah,
info
yeah,
dump, but when you do it the right way, it
yeah.
feels like everyone was telling the story sequentially still, or everyone was still there in the room even if
Yes.
they weren't the one talking. And so that leads me to a question. I have a couple of funny things about different things on pages, but how do you decide when to reveal a twist or when to reveal the thing we've been like that the characters have been waiting to find out, and then suddenly it happens and I'm like, well, that felt like exactly when that was supposed to happen.
Oh, great. I love hearing that. Thank you. So this is, we're getting into the fun and the magic of being a thriller writer, a mystery writer, which is exactly figuring out when to do that. And I was talking with Aggie Bloom Thompson, another thriller mystery writer, like a week ago. We had this Zoom, and she said something so brilliant that I have to use, and with all credit to her. But it's the perfect description of what you're thinking when you're doing this. But say that there is, an elephant in a dark room, in a pitch black room, right? And there are maybe like five or six people walking up to the elephant, and one is at the front and feels the trunk and the tusks, and one is feeling the ears beside them, one feels the legs. So everyone's got this sliver of
Mhm.
what this elephant looks like, or the tactile experience. And it takes all five of them together to give this accurate picture of what they have access to, which is this one, part of the elephant. And you're doing the same thing with this large picture of what has happened over, in Hot Girl Murder Club, the full mystery of everything together spans decades.
Mhm.
And you know that different characters have this particular access point, this particular set of knowledge. And the beautiful orchestration of being the writer is figuring out how to play those perspectives together and figure out when it is that someone needs to step forward and say, like, okay, here's this piece. And you're trying to put it all together. And Isabel, for example, doesn't know so much of what Gray and Rosie and all these other characters have access to. If it was from her point of view, the story would be so massively different because she can't look 10, 20 years ago and see certain things. Um, so it's the absolute fun and of being a thriller writer is coming up with those massive Word documents or massive Excel spreadsheets. Or, my favorite thing to do is to like tape pieces of paper up on my wall and look and see, and you're just constructing that puzzle. Um,
Yeah.
and you get it wrong over and over and over again until the final, until you finally, with a lot of help from your editor and other people, get it right. And so that's the fun.
Yeah. And I think that that's what makes it fun for a reader because I cut my teeth on mysteries by Mary Higgins Clark as young
Yes.
as 6th grade,
Love it.
where a teacher actually called my mom and was like, "Do you know that she's reading this book?" And my mom's like, "Yeah, I gave it to her. It's fine."
I
Um,
love it. Okay.
oh yeah,
Props to your mom.
right. Oh well,
Yeah.
we've always been a mystery reading family.
Yeah.
JD Robb, which is Nora Roberts' mystery pen name,
Yeah.
and even James Patterson, and just a lot of the Sue Grafton back in the day is for
Yes.
Alibi. Like just so many, because that puzzle was so interesting to me.
Yeah.
And there have been books where I've read it and I get to the review, or the reveal, and I'm like, well, that was dumb and doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names, but I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you that I have read the advanced reader copy of a very well-known thriller horror writer's new book that comes out later this year, and I was gravely disappointed.
Oh no, that's the worst when that happens.
I got like, I kept going because I was like, okay, this is going to get better. This person has this massive platform and they have all of these books out, and it's going to get better. And here's to say it could just not be for me, right?
Yeah.
Like a bottle of wine, it's not for me.
Yeah.
But there was a point where I was like, I just think it's just a not good book. Like, I don't, there are those times where I'm like, I know this book is not for me, and there are times where I'm like, I think this is also just a really quickly poorly written mystery.
Yeah, like
I don't know
there's
how else to
something going
describe.
on in the execution that's not quite working.
Yeah, that's not
Um,
quite working. Where I'm just like, okay, so maybe I don't have to go back and read their previous 20 books, because maybe they're just not for me, and that's what we are all allowed to do.
yeah, 100%. And
But
I
as
know
I'm
that there are plenty of people who feel that way about my books too. So we all take our lumps, and it's all
But
it's
as
all
I
fair
was
game.
rereading it yesterday, and I was still being like, okay, I know some of the things, right? Like, I've read it
Yeah.
once, so I do know some of the reveals, but I'm getting to some of them and the way they're happening. And I was still just like, it's like putting that piece into the puzzle and just going, wow, how did that, like, how did that happen? But it makes perfect sense. It's not me going, well, that doesn't make sense to that character or what we've been presented about what is going on. So I think for this one, especially because it's been a while since I read your previous ones, this one's so
Hmm.
fresh. But I'm thinking back even to, like, with This Book Will Bury Me, like, there was some of that same thing of when something would get revealed to Jane, and I would just be like, oh, that makes sense. I
Music to my ears.
But also, this is where I get kind of like, I wanted to be a writer when I was younger. I wanted to write a great novel. I went into being an editor, and now as a bookseller. I am still shocked, even sometimes when the book is not necessarily for me, but the language could be
Yeah.
beautiful or just their other things. I just want to crack open your head sometimes and be like, how did you do that? How did you string those words together in this way? And it made my brain go, well, that was cool.
Oh, that wanting to crack someone's head open and look inside to me is the highest compliment because I literally say that that is one of the reasons I write books because I am so fascinated with other people by other people that it's I want to crack everyone's heads open and go inside and figure out what's going on in there.
Well, if I
Um,
remember, that was something we talked about with The Last
yeah.
Housewife.
Yep.
Was I feel like sometimes when people ask me, they're like, why do you read such dark books? I'm like, because I think people are so weird.
Yes.
I think people, and weird in a, not in a bad, in a you're doing something
Oh,
or anything like that.
weird,
Weird.
complimentary, weird,
Yeah.
interesting. Hmm.
Why did your brain go there? Why did my brain think this intrusive thought at 3 a.m. when I
Yes.
woke up and was like, I heard a noise? The way that our brains work and work so differently, having been in the last couple of years, probably since the last time we spoke, acknowledging and being diagnosed with ADHD and hitting
Mm.
the age where perimenopause is knocking at the door.
Oh gosh, yes.
Understanding how differently my brain works than other people's, but in a way that I can now look at it and go, well, I can do things differently than other people can.
Yes.
I can a write something that is funny where someone else might have written it more a little clinical,
Yep.
or I can relate to people on a different level about certain things that interest me, and this is why book selling is my wheelhouse, because I could talk about books all day. The
Yeah.
ones that interest me, the ones that make me feel something and pull something out of me that I want to share. And so when I think of the weirdness of other people, it's more kind of like, oh, talk to me about that.
Yeah.
Tell me why you thought that. It's why I read memoir.
I
I
love
love
that.
memoir because I'm like, well, what happened to you? Tell me about your life.
Ooh, you're gonna turn me into a memoir reader.
It,
Like that's the sexiest sell for memoir I've ever gotten. I love it. No, I will say, and to something you said earlier that really stuck with me, about, being less interested in like the Ted Bundys of the world, or the killer who's usually a man, statistically speaking,
Mhm,
whose motive is so often the main and sole focus of, true crime documentaries, or um, so much writing and research in psychology and unfortunately crime fiction. But the answer to motive is so typically like some combination of genetics and upbringing. And it's like I'm less interested in why this man has done this. I want to know why you and me and the people who often go completely under the radar of,
mhm,
this much attention, or why the victims, or the people who are maybe a little bit complicit in different ways, like why are we attracted to dark things? What motivates our, actions? There's just, this is why I write books where the central characters, always women, are in some way their own antagonists more than any other character, or, so much a part of their journey is them grappling with their own complicity and the shades of it.
mhm,
It's just because I find those women so much more, vastly more interesting, to explore. That's richer territory for fiction, I think.
yeah.
And thank God for you, Julie, because it sounds like you're my platonic ideal reader, and agree with that.
Well, and it's so interesting when you find a book, The Last Housewife, like I said, it caught me in a great time,
Hmm.
and I do pay attention to a fair amount of true crime, maybe to my own detriment, that when I was reading it I was like, "Oh, well, this sounds familiar, but it's a completely different take."
Yeah.
Same with This Book Will Bury Me. I was like, oh, this sounds familiar, but it's different. It's not what I've heard before, not what I maybe thought of when hearing some of the things that could have inspired it, or things that we keep hearing in the news. Um, with Hot Girl Murder Club, I think you've tapped into what a lot of us wish that we could do, which is move in the shadows,
Yes.
which is find the justice not by inflicting physical harm on anyone,
Hmm.
but perhaps some sort of consequence for their action, and not necessarily go and shout it from the rooftops, right? Like
Yes.
I'm not going to be out there like Batman, and I want just a little hint of, you don't get to talk to people that way anymore either, or
Yes.
you that's not what we're going to do anymore. um we'll see if it happens. I think that you have a couple of things that you say in here, and one of them is from Luca Clearwater, which is about um the evolution of women, the epigenics of this like underground thing
Yeah.
starting to boil up. And honest to God, I hope we see it.
I
Like,
mean, Hot Girl Murder Club is my vision of what an ideal playing out of justice could look like, then confronted with the reality of how the world actually works.
Mhm.
But as my gift to myself and to my readers, without spoiling anything, there's triumph in the end in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. And so this is my wish fulfillment fantasy. This is my vision of what it could look like in so many ways. And the Luca Clearwater, I'm so glad you brought that up because it's one of my favorite, she says like women are evolving at a different pace than men because we have to.
Mhm.
And was my clearest love letter to the Bene Gesserit sisterhood. This book is very influenced by Dune, the Dune saga, because there's just, I think, so much in Dune, which I've loved since I was a young kid, about investing too heavily in heroes to save
Mhm.
you, and the heavy lift of revolution and global change. So there's just so much richness in that book, in this fantasy, dressed up in this fantasy world. But I've always loved the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, this like super powerful group of women who work in the shadows and whose ideas, they're trying to do all this genetic configuring to try to produce, obviously, someone who can be a hero or savior. And I loved the idea of, not to be too spoilery, but a woman thinking like, well, there's something to looking at things from this. Like, why is it that not all men, but always men? And why is it that there seems to be these latent traits that we just can't seem to eradicate? There's these predilections for violence and exploitation and predation.
Yep.
And what can we do about it? So,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because I
I'm
think
really having fun with that
I
in this
think
book.
everything that I've ever read, and it's very limited, but everything fiction or non where there's a matriarchy
Hmm.
doesn't happen. And it's so hard sometimes to walk through the world and think, well, if I can recognize that, why can't everybody else?
Yep. Yep.
Why can't we all? I know that we could talk for hours, but you have, I'm sure, a book you're working on.
I
I'm,
do.
I'm not going to ask because I think a lot of authors are like, let's focus on this one, but I look forward to the next one. What I
Thank you.
would love to know is, can you give us a couple of other authors that you think we should be reading who maybe aren't getting the due that they deserve?
Oh, that's fabulous question. So I've been shouting about Bad Habits by Amy Gentry for a really long time. Amy Gentry, she wrote Good Is Gone and other thriller books, and she's just one of the smartest thriller writers that I've come across. And Bad Habits is her dark academia book, and it came out, I want to say 2021, 2022, has gotten nowhere near the amount of attention it deserves. I think that Lane Fargo deserves every accolade and superlative. I know that she's found such a wide readership, switching genres to The Favorites, which came out this past year. Wuthering Heights meets Ice Dancing, fabulous. But I think that her thrillers, They Never Learn, which is an incredible female vengeance thriller, is slept on too much, as is her previous book, Tempest. Um, who else? I would say my girl May Cobb here in Texas, but May is having her moment right now.
Good. I saw
Um,
the blurb, so I love that.
yes, yes. May and I, we've been on this roller coaster together for a long time. I could not be more thrilled that she's Hunting Wives is getting so much success, and I think that
Mm, yes.
um, I would encourage readers to go and read My Summer Darling, which is my personal favorite of May's books. She's just doing sexy, sultry thrillers that center women's illicit desire in a way that no
Mhm.
one else is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, couldn't love that more. Any thriller, I say this all the time, but it's a really crowded crime fiction, such a crowded genre. And I think that the way to stand out, at least books stand out to me when they have really pitch perfect voices. Their main characters don't sound like other people. So, um, you know, Listen for the Lie. I know that got plenty of attention and probably doesn't need by Amy Tintera, doesn't need more shout out, but just incredible voice there. Julie Chan is dead. Um, what the just oh, Stone Cold Fox by Rachel Collar Croft.
Okay.
Incredible. It's a a thriller from the perspective of an unabashed gold digger. And it's so fun and the voice is so incredible. And We Love the Nightlife was her follow-up to that about two female vampires who love partying and each other's company so much they decide to make themselves immortal party girls. Fabulous. So, yeah, I could go on and on. And those books deserve so much more hype.
Yeah. I love that. Well, I love that you're yeah, that you're supporting, other authors, indie authors and indie bookstores. Like I said, we appreciate
Yes.
it so much. Obviously, being in Texas, if you ever make it out to Oregon, if there's a con that you think that you're going to be
Yes,
in, maybe up in Portland, holler at us. I will come up and see you, or vice versa, come down to Bend.
I
We
will.
actually, uh, a TikTok reader, Carrie, she goes under Curry Reads, Kurry Reads,
Uh-huh.
but they hosted their first Killer Reader weekend in Bend in early May. And I was there and we sold out of books in like 45 minutes. It was bonkers. And
Fabulous.
then in September, another group is hosting a bunch of horror authors at Timberline Lodge up outside of Portland, which is where they shot part of The Shining.
Oh
And it's
my
called
God.
Massacre on the Mountain. And surprisingly, the con itself is super inexpensive. It's the
Uh-huh.
hotels that are going to cost everybody a pretty penny, but
Yeah.
they're actually going to screen The Shining because parts
Yeah.
of it were filmed at Timberline Lodge. But we're just seeing this fun thriller horror upswing this summer, with also with kind of a trad wife bent, like I was mentioning, Saratoga Schaefer's trad
Love
wife.
that. Yes.
Sarah
Yesteryear.
Langdon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yesteryear is getting a little bit of the Trad Wife love, but Sarah
Yeah.
Langdon has a book coming out in the fall also called Trad
Yes.
Wife, which I already read and have given my advanced reader copy to a friend for
I
a possible book
love
club.
Sarah Lincoln. Yeah.
I had not read her before, so now I'm going to try and go back to some of her backlist, but I'm kind of loving this. At least what I'm seeing is this a little bit of surge in some of the thriller horror, especially just so women focused, of like,
Yes.
of saying we're not going to take it, but also looking at this summer of trad wife thing. I think is going to be really fun because
I love it so much, and not to insert myself in this thing that other people are doing to great, but I look back at The Last Housewife, which it was so interested in like
mhm,
this cult that was trying to make little trad
right,
wives, and that was and think like, okay, there's a genealogy there,
mhm,
between this is me inserting myself into the tradwife boom, but I'm like, there's a genealogy there where housewife can sit, on a family tree with some of these
right.
books, and it just makes me so happy because I remember when we were promoting The Last Housewife, people saying, there's this tradwife thing that's happening on TikTok. Have you heard of it? It's starting to get kind of popular. And that being my entry point, people connecting it to housewife, and now obviously it is what it is, this huge
It
thing.
is what it
So
is. Yeah, we'll have to see where it goes. It's 2026 is definitely going to continue to be an interesting year, and I just look forward to the books that will remind me that women are much more powerful than most give us credit for.
yes, amen.
Yeah,
Beautiful. And
yeah.
I want to come to Oregon and to Bend, and now I'm like, maybe I need to insert myself into Massacre on the Mountain or one of these other really fun
I just
things.
now that it's kind of on my radar, I'm just seeing more things kind of, it's that timing is everything, right? You start to get
Yes.
interested in something and you're like, oh, this could be a fun thing. This is my hyper focus for 2026 is horror and
Yes.
thriller. So we'll see how
Love
that
it.
goes. Thank you again so much for taking the time, for continuing to be such a supportive author. I see you on social media so much, and I know that your fans really love getting to know you. So please just keep doing exactly what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Julie. What a joy to talk to you again. And yeah, this
Yes.
hopefully I will get to do it for many, many more books to come, have these conversations with you. You're the best. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I will follow up with your people and send them
Okay.
a copy of this. So,
Love it.
get back to writing
Okay.
and we'll see what happens next.
I
Thank you
love
so
it.
much. Have a great rest of your
Thank
day.
you. You too.
All
Bye.
right. Bye.